if you're so high valued, they wouldn't care. They would just beg you to have sex with them
And then I would say
because like they
your
don't care
audience
that.
is
Yeah.
certainly not high value and they can barely get any girl. And now you're going to ruin the one opportunity they get.
No, no, well, here's, oh, thank you so much, Jasmine. That's, then become, you're not high value, become high valued. There, fixed.
Yeah, you become high value enough that you can start reading Quran verses, and I'd be like, look, I haven't heard a single,
Is it,
at least in the West, like say that, oh, if you go to America, then these rules no longer apply. But obviously, because he doesn't know Islam very well, he was just like, oh, it's not a sin. Zina's not a sin. And everyone's like, yeah, it is. So even the Muslims were like, she got you on that argument. But yeah, there has been this trend of red pill creators like Sneeko, Andrew Tate. And it's funny because the things they like about it, like Sneeko is like, you know, he's young, he's like a big streamer guy. And I've noticed that he at first goes like their way. And then he goes, well, this kind of seems degenerate. He goes, oh, in Islam, I can have 4 wives. So yeah, you should just be with the 4 wives. You shouldn't go be with 100 women, just the 4. So it's almost like it's still misogynistic enough. It's the most misogynistic religion that they can adopt.
actually, you can go beyond 4 because you could have 4 wives and unlimited slaves, sex slaves.
Yeah, well, yeah, I guess that's less so of the common belief, but I would
Right.
I would defer to you on that. But you know, these guys, I
Yeah.
mean, especially these, I think there's also these Islamic creators that are like blowing up like Muhammad hijab and these types of, you know, like insane Muslim debaters. And these guys seem
Right.
attractive to these guys because they're strong. A lot of them, like you see even the arguments like Andrew Tate makes, like Christianity's weak. They don't defend the belief. In Islam, they'll kill you if you draw the prophet. That's attractive to these guys who want this macho, like
Right.
almost like warlord, like Muhammad vibes. They don't want the hippie Jesus. They want the strong, the one who crushes enemies, the one who has all these women, the one who doesn't let you disrespect the Quran. Like that's what he says. He's like, oh, I like it because you can't disrespect the Quran. In America, they let you make fun of Jesus. They don't defend the beliefs like Muslims do. So that's why they've gotten so much attention and traction, especially linking up with these other Muslim influencers like Muhammad Hijab and some of these other ones. And it brings off like, oh yeah, in Islam, we actually have men be masculine, because their whole argument is Christianity has been infected by feminism and liberal beliefs that make men weak, and get rid of gender roles, whereas Islam still holds strong to those. So I think that's why it's attractive to these kinds.
That's a direct promotion of violence by
Yeah.
Andrew Tate. When it said like, oh, look at Muslims, they don't let people insult their prophet. Well, people are afraid to insult the prophet. Well, why are people afraid to insult the prophet? Because of the violence. And if you say that's good, basically you're endorsing like that French teacher that was beheaded.
Yeah.
You're saying that's a good, you're endorsing that. You're endorsing that. It's bizarre that he's saying that. Like when you, how is he not even canceled? That's an endorsement of violent behavior on social media.
He's banned on all social media platforms, but he's just
Okay.
so, I mean, he's in house arrest in Romania, or I think now he's just stuck for human trafficking. He's just,
But he wasn't banned for that. He wasn't he was banned for like other things, but like that people, when you endorse violence Islamically, social media doesn't
it has to be a
react
direct
as much as, yes, it has to be direct. By the way, something you said about zina being a sin in Islam, right, which we are correct, and he denying that's actually puts you out of the fold of Islam. You are not, because you could be as a Muslim, so you might use this against them if you want in the future. In Islam, if you sin, you're still a Muslim, right? Because Muslims sin all the time. That doesn't make you not a Muslim. But if you deny Allah's commands, then you are not a Muslim anymore. So you could, for example, have sex with somebody outside of marriage, and that will be counted as a sin, which you will pay for in the afterlife. And unless you ask God for forgiveness, but you will still be a Muslim, even though you have sinned and had sex out of marriage. But if you come and say that is not a sin in Islam, then that would make you an ex-Muslim. That will make you a kafir. That will put you outside of that. You cannot do. So he's technically.
I should call him that next time. I should be like, you are now an apostate.
Yeah, you're an apostate,
Oh,
and you're
just
an
imagine
apostate.
more. Oh, he hates me. It's so good.
Yeah, yeah, you're an apostate, and according to Islam, you could be
To
put
death.
to death
Yeah,
right now.
to death.
Yes,
So have fun with that,
right.
because he has a large. I find these like men from other like Islamic countries that come and get raised here, but they still want that misogyny and that kind of, especially when they don't do well with women. This is the kind of content that they like. And his argument is always, well, women have become horrible and promiscuous, so you have to, if you want to succeed, you have to go by these rules. Back in those days, all women were virgins and submissive. And I mean, have you heard of the passport bro trend, where these
Yes.
men, yeah, they want to go to other countries and find these more submissive women? But it's funny because the way I'm able to combat all these is everything is the opposite of what's showcased through statistics. Like he'll be like, "Oh, educated women are the worst. They're gonna do," and I'm like, "Well, the more educated you are, the lower your divorce rate is. So these women are actually less likely to
Yes.
divorce." Or he'll say, "Oh, he's like 35. He'll say you want like a 19, 20-year-old so that they're not corrupted by feminism." And I said, "Oh, but if you have a 10-year age gap, your divorce rate goes up by 40%. So how do you reconcile this?" And then they just get mad. One time they kicked me off for that. So it's very
Wow.
easy it's very easy to combat their arguments, because if you look at this data and the science, it all goes against what they're saying. Oh, don't date educated women. Date women that are 18, marry women that are 18 years old. I said, look, the three things that are going to lower your divorce rate is 25 and up, or 25 and 30, between 25 to 32, college educated, and first marriage. That's those that would already drop it to 20%, because they have this idea that women all are divorcing men, taking their money, blah 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 blah. But then they say go marry some 19-year-old girl who wants money, and I'm like, this is the worst advice ever.
Do you ask? By the way, I love it when you drop like statistics and stuff, because these people act like they're intelligent, and all these girls are idiots who don't know what they're
Yeah,
talking about, and they're supposed to like catch you. And but you come up with data like that, it's just basically completely reverses what they were intending to do. I don't know if you have done this or not, because they talk about sexual morality and degeneracy, while at the same time they're endorsing a prophet that had sex, basically RAPE'd a 9-year-old girl, and they are endorsing that. They're advocating for that. That's your prophet, and you
yeah.
are
I
endorsing
mean,
that as a role model for all men of all time. So how is that not hypocritical?
there was actually a viral clip that I watched recently. Do you know who Destiny is? He's like a streamer.
Yes,
He's
yes,
Yeah.
I've been on his show a couple times.
Yeah, he's him and Sneeko, they were on some like call or whatever, and he asked what's the age of consent in Islam, because of Aisha
Mm.
being, and he didn't know how to answer it, because he's one of those new Muslims that just decided to convert. And he said, "Oh, is it okay to be with 9-year-old?" And he didn't really know what to say other than the old, "Oh, it was at that time 9 was more developed than this time." Some other Muslims say, "Oh, she was actually 18." You know all the arguments people make, because I love sometimes when I want to fall asleep, especially when I was more into this stuff, I'll fall asleep listening to one of these guys defend these horrible verses, like they're lashing adulterers, and they'll like be like, "Oh,
Right.
it's not a hard lash, and it's only if there's this, so it's only for people who are doing it open, poor." Like they find, and I'm like, this is so retarded. I'm like, this
Yes.
is stupid.
By the way, it's not the age of. So if I was talking to Destiny, I would say it's not the age of consent, because there is no consent in Islam. The only consent that matters is the consent of the parents. It's not the consent of that woman. Like if you're looking for the
But
age
that's
of
gonna
consent,
look
there is no
bad.
such a thing. Yes.
Nico doesn't want to
Yeah.
look bad. So if you say that, that's even worse for Islam.
So it would be the age of having sex, not the age of consent, because even if you get older, it's not your choice anyways. um and also the age of consent, so that's in that. So if you ever want me to show you this, let me know, because this is the hadith that shows Muhammad had sex with a 9-year-old. But if you actually look at the Quran, it's actually below 9. It's below 9, and it's actually even below having your period. So the Quran makes it very clear that you could have sexual intercourse even with women who have had not yet their periods. So the Quran is actually makes it even worse than the Aisha story. A lot of people don't know that, because
Yeah.
it's a
Well, I mean,
it's a
if
little
you
bit.
were on Sneeko's side, what would you, is there any defense of this that you can think of? That's good.
It's the defense is that whatever the actual defense is that nobody would use because it will make them look terrible is that what we get, the idea of right and wrong comes from God, right? So even so you guys are saying, oh, this is wrong. How would you know this is wrong? Where are you atheists are getting your
Yeah,
ideas of wrong
moral
from? If
subjectivity.
God is saying this is okay, then it's obviously okay because he's the creator of the universe and he understands his creation more than you people could ever understand. And you must be so full of yourself and so you have too much faith in your ability to reason to think that you would know these things. But we as Muslims realize the limitation of the human mind. We have access to the creator of everything, and we get our right or wrong from him, and we don't question it. We just accept it.
Yeah. So but then the other person would say, okay, so if God said it's okay to molest babies, is it okay to molest babies? And then the person has to say yes. So that's not an argument that makes you look good. And then it goes into,
Yeah,
you
it
know,
doesn't make
like the Euthyphro dilemma. Like you could use that. Like, are things good because God
yes.
commands it, or does God command it because things are good? So you can corner people on that. And plus, these guys, they want to make Islam seem good. They're not going to come on here and say, well, they could, I mean, they do that. They say, you guys don't have a conception of right or wrong. And then you can say, okay, well, if God says to go kill your mother, do you go kill your mother? Is that good now? And the real answer is yes.
Well, that's the story of, yeah, well, that's Abraham's story. That's the
Yeah.
whole point of that's the whole point of Abraham's story is to advocate for the divine command theory of morality. God told Abraham to go kill your son, and
Yeah.
that's now the good thing to do. You know, so
But
that's the
people
point.
do this kind of cherry pick. Like you're like me in the sense that, like, I think you were even saying this, and I think was it Sam Harris who says this, that like the most logical religious people are the fundamentalists. Because I was thinking, like, if I
Right.
really believe this is the word of God, I'm gonna. But people now they do kind of. I take this, I take that, which is good because I don't want them to all be crazy. But at the same time, if I
It's
really
actually not.
believe it, I would be crazy. I would follow it to a T. I'd say yes, this is the truth. And you saying you were hardcore religious because your brain kind of works like mine, I would follow it. I would follow it. I wouldn't just say, I like this part. But thank God most people do that, because imagine if I don't want most people to be fundamental Muslims, but being a fundamentalist is the most logical and intellectually coherent way to follow the scripture. So I think a frustration I have, and I'm sure a frustration you have too, is we're not going to eradicate religion from these places. So these reformists, the ones who say, oh, that's just a metaphor, oh, they don't really, those ones are actually doing more to make people less extreme. But it's annoying because we're still
I
confined to this
disagree.
book.
I actually disagree with you. I think the reformers are doing more harm than the fundamentalists. Okay, most Muslims who are nominal or minimalist Muslims, they're not. It's not that they're not doing these evil things because somebody convinced them to reform Islam. It's just
Yeah,
that Islam hasn't been able to take over all their humanity, and most
exactly.
people are just living peaceful lives because that's how the best way to live. It's not because of reformist arguments, right? The
Mhm.
reformist arguments are actually dangerous because they take advantage of the fact that so many Muslims are not being that crazy to sell the idea that Islam can be good. We don't need reformist arguments. The reformist arguments make Islam last longer. You know, I
But do
don't
you
think
think there's a
without
lot of people who won't be able to let go of Islam? And I think almost for them, like, okay, like my mom's one of these people. Like she doesn't
right.
cover her hair or something. And I'll be like, why? Oh no, it doesn't really say that in Islam. They're all wrong. But she doesn't want to let go of her faith. And so
Yes,
I
but
almost feel like,
yeah, but that's fine. That's fine. You know, I understand that, but it's not like your mom is all of a sudden, if I go show her like this is what Islam teaches, she's not going to go become a fundamentalist. That's what
that's
I think. Like I think a lot of, so I don't think like you need reformists. The reformist arguments are not making people more moderate or more liberal. It might give them some peace. They've already
justification.
decided to live lives like that. It might give them some more peace, but we don't need them to be at that much peace, because the cost of reformist arguments is less people will challenge Islam and Islam will last longer. It's kind of like there's two types of viruses. One that if you get, it will just show its symptoms right away, and it shows that it's lethal and it could kill you. But there's another type of virus that it doesn't show its symptoms for a very long time, and a lot of people carry it without it, without it killing them, but they are carrying the virus in the environment, and those viruses are even more dangerous because you don't notice the dangers of it. And I think like reformists are basically that. Reformists are giving excuses for Islam for it to stay in society, and eventually it will grow and grow and grow. And once it has the upper hand, that's when it will go back to its fundamental roots. That's why reformists are so dangerous. I don't think if you take reformist arguments away, people will become more fundamentalist.
Do you think, but that's the thing, if every Muslim speaker, every Muslim advocate you're saying was 100% fundamentalist, because people really are uncomfortable with letting go of God. They're
Right.
very uncomfortable with it. They want to keep it at like all costs. And so people like us, like we're just like, get rid of it, be a nihilist pretty much, whatever. That is a much harder thing for them to hop onto than for them to say, oh yeah, maybe it's not okay to marry a 9-year-old, because then they make up some mental gymnastics to keep the faith but be a good person, and then go out and at least get rid of. I agree with you. I wish more than anything that we could go into these countries and use our arguments, and we're going to turn some people, especially in Iran, like I feel even my dad now, because he's just so sick of he's an atheist, but even him, like I'll be like, renounce Islam, and he's like, something in me, I still can't. He's like, I still can't do that.
I don't expect all of these people to leave Islam. I just don't think we owe them reformers. I think when people are not beating their wives, when they're not becoming suicide bombers, it's not because of reformist arguments, even if they still stay a Muslim. I don't think these people are going to go back to like, okay, I don't want to beat my wife, but I have to because of Islam. If you don't want to beat your wife, you're not going to beat your wife. I think the direction, I think people are misunderstanding the direction. It's not like reformist arguments, therefore I don't beat my wife. It's first, I don't want to beat my wife, and then I go look for arguments that will confirm that I don't have to beat my wife. But I'm saying if you don't give...
can't get radicalized by fundamentalism. Like
it's,
there are people who
I think the deradicalization is... I think the deradicalization is not coming from reformist argument. It's coming from modernization. It's coming for better ideas. It's coming for alternative ways of living. I think it's coming from people seeing other ways of life and competing with Islamic way of life and choosing that. The reformist argument is not doing that.
Fundamentalism can radicalize those more, like that's the thing. It can work both ways. So there are people who start off moderate and then they go fundamentalist. And if there was more fundamentalist voices, do you not think that would increase or boost those moderate? Like, I mean, there's people who are normal people and they go join ISIS. Like, you know what I mean? Like that's...
Yes, it might. But what does that more is having a lot of Muslim beliefs in a society, right? So here's the thing: Islam keeps going up and down when it comes to fundamental or not fundamental. But the thing that keeps it around is the fact that it's flexible. The fact that it's flexible, that it goes on a like more moderate tone when it's being challenged, makes it last so long and so widespread that it's there in society when it needs to become fundamental again. And I don't think we need to give them that excuse. I don't need to.
The problem is that I feel like it's a little idealistic, because I agree. But I think people are just not going. If their options are fundamentalism or nothing, there are some people who will go fundamentalist because they will not be able to let go.
I'm not saying nothing. They will still be nominal Muslims. I'm just saying that the reason Muslims who are still Muslim live better lives is because it's not because somebody came and gave them a different interpretation of the Quran. It's because they saw other ways of life and they were like, I want that. That's the force that is making them live better lives, not because somebody came and lied to them about the Quran. And I don't think we should lie to people. I'm against lying. If you tell this Quranic verse that actually tells you to beat your wife, if you tell them like, no, it's not telling you that, I think you're lying to people, and that's not working. I mean, I see reformist argument as a defense. Yes,
it's a defense mechanism.
So, the reform refers, it's a defense mechanism. It's not actually making people more moderate. It's making people who've already decided to be more moderate more at peace with their Islam, and I don't think we owe them that.
I agree. But I'm trying to think of like my aunt. I agree with you, but I'm saying like my aunt, for instance, is Muslim, but she doesn't like but she just really is one of those, like, just wants God, prays, does all that stuff. And she found some weird whoever leader that's like, oh yeah, actually the Quran says not to cover your hair, blah, 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 blah. And she's like, yes, this aligns with, like you said, this aligns with how I want to live. I'm going to do it. But if she had no voices that were like that, and the only voices all told her to cover her hair, she might cover her hair, which I think is a worse outcome.
But I think that I would bet that that would not happen. I would bet that most of these people, once because they're exposed to other people that are living different lives, if they choose that, they would just not cover their hair, and they would just come up, with a struggle in their mind that, okay, maybe I'm sinning and stuff. But I don't think it's the reformist arguments that is making them not cover their hair. I think it's just basically watching other ways of life and being influenced, because Muslims are not like robots that you just put the Quran in them and they just follow it.
Mhm.
They're Muslims are influenced by Islam, but they're also influenced by their friends, influenced by the podcasts they listen to, by the books that they read.
Exactly.
And I just think that the Islam part, the more it is, the worse it is. I think, like, if you want to reduce the influence of Islam, don't replace the bad Islam with a good Islam, because there's no such thing as a good Islam. Just make the Islamic influence less, make other influences more pronounced in their mind, like
Like
more,
secularism
yeah,
and stuff.
yeah,
It's just a harder
secularism,
thing
modernism.
to like hop on. So I agree with you. I guess where I don't know, because it's all about the net. What's going to be the net positive or the net negative? Because
Then it-
fundamental voices turn people. It has an influence, because if there was no one being fundamental, then these people wouldn't have a place to go. But also, reformist arguments are also turning people a little bit more reform. So and then the question is, if we which outcome would be better overall? And I might agree with you that overall it may be better to not have the reform. Like, I actually do agree with you, because you remember, what's his name, Majid Nawaz is a hardcore, oh, let's reform. I disagree with him. I was like taking your position that why would we
Mm.
reform? Why would we make ourselves stuck? And then you're intellectually stuck because there's no good arguments. There's no good reformist arguments when the text literally says
Right.
the opposite. But like you said, it ties into what people want to believe. So they're going to believe what they want to believe. But I do think that there would be a segment of that population that if they didn't have the justification for being moderate, they would be like, I have no choice but to go. Like, some of them, I'm not saying they'd be
Too,
suicide bombers,
yeah,
but
yes, but
they
too small of a segment to make it too. I think too small of. I think the net is the net is usually in the favor of truth, right?
Mhm.
So here's how I'll make my case. The reform argument is a lie. For the sake of making society better, we're telling them, okay, this is a dangerous lie. Let's take the dangerous lie and give them a less dangerous lie. And I'm here telling you that bet on the truth. You might find exceptions, like here, maybe if we lied to people, it would have been benefited. I'm just saying, you're asking the question, what would be the in as a net, like, average, which will be better? And what I'm advocating for, if we push for the truth, maybe in some rare cases it would cost us, it would have some cost, but on average, betting on the truth is better. It has better net results. And telling people lie, because the Islamic reform is filled with lies.
Oh
It's
yeah,
telling people that, yeah, so why would anybody think that lying to people and telling them, please believe this lie instead of that lie, will have an average net
well,
positive
okay.
result?
Interesting, because this is kind of the debate going on with Christianity right now, like with what Dawkins recently said, like
Right.
where people say, like, you see, especially in these kind of higher level, like they'll say, whoa, it's like Jordan Peterson's the king of this. Like, he goes, oh yeah, maybe there's no literal God, but we want people to live as if there is. Because imagine if you took out the belief of Christianity, the argument is, I don't necessarily agree with it, I just think this is very interesting to think about. If you take out Christianity from the West, you're taking out those Christian values, which is what's keeping, even though, so then the question is, do we lie? Do we lie and let these people believe in Christianity because they act better when they do? Like, and I say, I don't, first of all, I can't lie to myself and I can't lie to my children. But as an overall
Mhm.
society, I mean, we've seen people like Douglas Murray start to have this hardcore atheist that now say, okay, I'm still an atheist, but I'm glad, like, what's that saying? I'm not a Christian, but I'm glad my mate is, so she doesn't steal the silver. Like, it's the same argument. It's kind of like, I don't agree with it necessarily, but that's what the debate
Yeah.
is now, is like, with all this with the current
Yeah.
conflict and stuff, is like, oh, these values are brought in by, or some people tie them into Judeo-Christian foundations, and if we take that away, it's kind of like, atheists, I think a lot of us struggle because community is very good for us as humans, and we haven't been able to create a community the way that like church can or a mosque can. And the problem is, no matter how much we want a community, if we don't believe, if there is not that unifying force taking us to church or taking us to mosque, we don't have anything strong enough to bring that community element in. So religion has those kinds of benefits. Now the question is, there's two questions: is religion true, and is it beneficial? Well, true, I mean, we're both on the same page that it's not. Is it beneficial? I think we're both on also the same page that it's not, but it obviously has served an adaptive purpose for so many cultures throughout history. And it gives people, I mean, people who are religious tend to be more at peace. There was even that study that they were more easily able to deal with COVID. It seems to have at least some personal benefit. And the question is, like, I would rather know the truth than live in a lie. But like, for instance, atheists have higher IQ. Religious people tend to be more happy. Would you rather be happy or smarter? Like, I don't know. I don't have a choice, but maybe I'd rather be.
So a couple of points. First of all, religions do have benefits, but it's just the cost outweighs the benefits. And there are whatever benefits religion has, there are ways to get to those benefits without the cost that religion comes with it. Because religion comes with a baggage, comes with a lot of what we can look at religion and figure out what it has that has some benefits and just remove the religious belief. The belief part in the gods is the harmful part, right? And also, when you say the studies that show some religious people are at peace, there are so many contradicting data on this. But also drugs also bring people peace. So again, it is true that religion brings some people peace, but at what cost? Can we get those beliefs? Because with modern secular ways, we could basically have those better ways that doesn't come with all the mumbo jumbo that religion
Can we have
comes with,
all of it
right?
though? Like, can we have community? Can we have those things? Like, I'm not saying one way or another. Can we actually coalesce people enough in order? And then the problem is, human beings, unless they're like wired more like us, they're going to always want answers to the chaos. So I notice in my generation, people are turning away from religion, but now they turn to crystals or astrology. Oh, what month were you born? Are you Capricorn? And these don't have the problems of religion, but they're just as stupid.
Right.
In fact, they're more stupid because they don't have any like of the lasting cultural, or it's just like, oh, if you're born on this day, or now there's like numerology where it's like the day you're born, you can find out your personality, or, oh, if you do this crystal, like these people are, because people always want an answer to something to help
Well, we
them.
have answers. Well, those are not the good answers, but we have answers. We have better answers when it comes to
What is
explaining the
the answer?
world. We,
Like
we have
evolution,
scientists, we have
yeah, but
science,
the
we have
problem is
when it
that
comes to
doesn't give,
values, we have liberal values.
but it doesn't give people that comfort. It doesn't give people that comfort of like, oh, the universe, like now people with manifestation, the one of the
Yes,
comforting things about God is that you believe there's this person who loves you,
but we
who
don't.
helps.
Okay, but there are other sources of comfort, and sometimes not being comfortable is important because
I
the
agree.
universe, right? So it's not like we don't owe people comfort all the time. There is utility to always feeling like, okay, there is nothing that's going to support me. I have to stand up on my own two feet. Like there is also utility in that. But also when it comes to community and feeling a sense of purpose and believing in something bigger than yourself, I think the best modern answer that we have to and that is civic nationalism. Civic nationalism, which is not like the kind of like ethno or nationalism or the kinds of nationalism that is very crazy and radical. Civic nationalism is in line with liberal values, and again gives people a sense of teamwork. It gives people a sense of working on something greater than them. It gives people a sense of belonging. So we have that instead of religion. I think we should appeal to that. Also, one more thing with regards to people feeling less at peace because they don't have any religion. Part of that is because they're not normal and society is pushing back against them, just like it was not very peaceful. It's not very peaceful to be gay, because it's not because there's anything within being gayness that makes you not at peace. It's just because the stress that society puts at you that makes being gay or being atheist or an ex-Muslim
No,
not
because
very peaceful.
when a
There's
loved
also that.
one dies, you want to believe they're going to be in heaven. Like that brings you peace. When something's happening, you praying, although it's useless, and if you
Right.
look at any studies, it's useless, but it brings people a peace. But meditation can do that too. So you're right. There are these alternative things. I think the difference between you and me is you have much more optimism about the general population than I do. I think a lot of people are much stupider than you and me, and they're not going to let go of these things anytime.
Well, like, even if they're not very intelligent, their trend is in our favor,
That's
right?
true.
And I think, yeah, and also I think I give people the benefit. Here's the thing: the belief that I'm advocating for is not that there's no cost associated with people. Like, my mom died. Okay, now I know that I'm never going to see my mom ever again. Well, that's painful, right?
Yeah.
Should we get rid of this pain? At what cost? Like, is okay, yeah, if I didn't have that pain, would that be better? Yeah, that would be better, that if I didn't have that pain. But we are losing so much more by spreading lies. Like, why do we have to just appeal to every single desire that we have,
Yeah, no, you're right. But
and
we
satisfy
shouldn't
that, given
spread
that
these.
it's so harmful? Yeah, no,
We
so
shouldn't
so
spread
my
them. But
point.
should we, are we going to be able to eradicate them without replacing it with
Yes,
astrology or something else? Or
yes,
manifestation? That's the new thing. If you think
well,
it,
it's not an o- it's not that black and white. We don't have, it's not that, are we going to be able to eradicate it completely? My point is that if we go from 5% atheism to 6% atheism,
Mhm.
or to 7% atheism, you're like, oh, it will never be 100%. Well, I'm not talking about 100%. Of course, like, we're not, it's not like we lose if we don't get to 100%. We're still winning if we get from 5% to 10%. A society that more people in it have more beliefs that is a reflective of reality is a better society. If you make your goal that in this society, the true people who believe in actual truth is 5%, if I could get it to 7%, if that's your goal, then that's achievable. If the way you're thinking, like, oh, it will never be 100%, if that's, then we will never do like, no activism will ever be able to get to 100% success.
Yeah, no,
So
I look,
just give up.
I'm an atheist. Oh, you're free. Sorry. I'm an atheist advocate too. That's why I got this book, because I was fighting with people on stream about like accepting this. But I'm kind of looking at where, and like, I'm in this generation. I see people that are like, yeah, I don't believe in religion, but now I believe in reincarnation. Well, that's just as stupid, but is it less harmful? Okay, so like maybe, instead of sitting here telling you how the universe and the crystals aren't working either, fine, believe that over this. Like, I love pushing people to believe in the things we want to believe in, but it's, and I think our work is very important. I guess I'm just less optimistic about, like, okay, like for instance, I don't believe in free will either. That is a very hard thing for people to grasp. Like, even people who read everything, they know there's no way, they still are like, well, I feel it. It's hard to get people. And also that belief also makes me think there's literal gene. There's that, what's that gene that makes you more likely to believe in spirituality or these kinds of things? There are so much wiring in people that makes them it makes it very hard to get rid of this. Now, you're right, whatever we can do, let's do. But like, my point back to like maybe reformists, or maybe even like, is it better if 80% of the religious people now move to crystals? It's just as stupid. It's as much of a lie, but at least there's not the misogyny, race, whatever. So I'm kind of looking at what's more practical. Like, am I going to be able to pull a person at church and tell them there's no free will, evolution? Like, even my parents, who are pretty liberal, like when I actually explain to them, like, oh yeah, our ancestors are monkeys, no matter what I tell them,
Well, they're
they're
not monkeys.
never going to accept that our ancestors were monkeys. Like, they're just never going. They're just like
Well, they're
divune.
not monkeys. We share an ancestor with monkeys.
Yeah,
They're
yeah,
not
yeah. We
monkeys.
share, but even that's what I mean. Like, our cousin, I like
Yes.
chimpanzees. I say this is our cousin. They say "kheli khar shudi." Like, they just literally like don't. They will not.
Right,
They
right.
will. People
Well,
have.
again, it's I want to move to some other questions regarding OnlyFans and stuff. But
Okay.
before we move there, I just want to state this, okay? All I'm saying is that an individual who has more beliefs that are closer to reality is an individual that is probably on average going to live a more fruitful life, like a more successful life, if your beliefs are closer to reality. And a society with people that have beliefs that are closer to reality is a society that is going to be able to progress faster and better, right? On average. I'm not saying like, are we going to make everybody smart, everybody have the right beliefs? I'm just saying on average, and this is a step by step, this is a slow process, and I am very optimistic. I mean, it's easy to be optimistic if you look at our history, look at
Mhm.
where we are compared to even 100 years ago. We are progressing really fast, and we are progressing because we have better beliefs that are matching reality. So if you go look at one person like, oh yeah, this guy left Islam and now he believes in crystals, okay, yeah, but those are examples. I'm looking at the longer term trend, and the longer term trend looks really good.